this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. Our guest today is someone that I knew I had to meet. We will be in Vegas together in 2026 for a retreat about diversification in our businesses. And as I was seeing her more and more on social media and we were traveling in the same circles, she came recommended by several people that I highly respect. So today we're going to talk about the tension that many women and helping professionals can face between being successful and staying true to themselves, which those of you that have been listening know that that is really what this show is all about. So we're going to talk a little bit about burnout, overfunctioning, and people pleasing, and how that can pull us out of integrity, and how to build a life and career that's aligned, sustainable, and rooted in self-trust. Kara Cruz, welcome to the show.
Uh-oh. Might have had a little bit of a tech glitch there.
Oh, no worries. So I have an editor. Let me mark the clip, and then she can go in and fix it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I'm really glad that we connected and that, as we were saying earlier, the stars have aligned and our colleagues have brought us together.
Absolutely. So fill everyone in on how this became a passion project for you and anything relevant to your career plan that will help us set the stage for what you're doing these days.
Yeah. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in California, and I started out like many therapists do, working in helpers and healers. We work in really high burnout environments. I was in community mental health. I really loved the people that I worked with. I loved my clients, but I was just at capacity, overwhelmed, burned out. At the time, I didn't know it. I had a clue and an inkling, but ADHD was something that was going on in my life that I was not diagnosed with until later on, after I became a therapist and went into private practice on my own and had time to actually really focus on therapy. But I just felt like I couldn't manage things, keep it all together. And I found that the clients that I gelled with the best and did my best work with happened to be the parents of the kids I worked with when I was in community mental health. So I knew that I wanted to stay focused on working with women who kind of like wore a lot of hats, did a lot, tried to kind of manage a lot at once and felt overwhelmed and burnt out. And just really helping them to get to know themselves, trust themselves, advocate for themselves, stick up for themselves, say no, and alleviate some of that burnout that they were experiencing. And so when I went into private practice, that became my focus on who I worked with. And as I, grew my private practice, I added a component that was training for therapists. I love working with therapists as well. So teaching workshops, trainings on mental health topics, eventually had some of my trainings approved to be a CE trainer. And I just found that I really loved working with the therapist, but I still loved working with my clients. But there was a common theme that kept coming up. Most of the therapists I worked with were also women, were also kind of in the, late 20s, mid to late 40s range, were feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, burned out themselves. And so there were just these themes that were kind of crossing over from clients to my colleagues. And so it just became very important to me to try to support them, not in a therapeutic way, but as a colleague, as a, friend, in terms of the colleagues I worked with, in the same way too, to help to build community, help to normalize how we were feeling, and build a sense of community and confidence in ourselves that we can say no, we can set boundaries, we can trust ourselves, and we can basically kind of run the show of our lives.
This is great. So there's so many different avenues that we can go there. So before we start talking about how you're helping other women with this, what would you feel comfortable sharing about your own journey? Because we are very oftentimes our own ideal client. So what did that look like for you as you were maybe making some changes or having that realization in your own life and career?
Yeah. I loved being a therapist. I've always known, and for a long time I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. I loved, psychology. I loved counseling based courses that I took in college. And I knew that that was something that I wanted to do. And then when I got that job and, kind of all your dreams come true and you graduate and you're so excited for all the things and then you're doing it, it was like, oh, this is what this is about. Did I make a huge mistake? And not so much did I make a huge mistake. I still knew that I wanted to be a therapist, but I thought this cannot be what it's like. This cannot be, how it's going to be forever. I felt like, when I was working with my clients, I did really good work. But when I was doing the administrative tasks and trying to hold it all together, I would joke with my supervisor. I was like, I'm a terrible therapist. I'm a terrible employee. I just felt like I couldn't perform. I couldn't do what I needed to do. I couldn't, make productivity and timeliness and do all the things. It was just too much. But I also am, kind of I had that achiever personality that I wanted to push myself. I wanted to apply for promotions in my work and wanted to become a supervisor and wanted to grow. And I kept taking on all these things. But then feeling like I was at capacity. I felt burnout. I felt tired. I didn't have energy on the weekends. I didn't have energy with my son after work. I just felt like I wanted to come home and just kind of like collapse on the couch. So through my own work, when I was, I did my own therapy hours in grad school. Like in our program, we were supposed to do about 20 hours. And I did that, but it felt very surface level. I was really working on work-life stress and would touch on it, but it really wasn't about how am I going to make change in what I'm doing. It's like just kind of going and venting about it. And then when I started to see a therapist it was actually during COVID when I was at home and I had a little bit more space and time and privacy to do telehealth, I really started to kind of realize how burnout and overwhelmed that I was. And I had a somatic-based therapist who really helped me to kind of get in touch with my nervous system and what was happening in my body. And, really guiding, it's like the answers were all there and I knew, but I didn't want to accept what they were, that I was overwhelmed. I was overworked. I was doing too much. I wasn't saying no. And the scary thing about that is it really meant that I couldn't kind of blame all the things on the outside. I had to really look at what I need to change something. I need to say no to something. I need to change something. I have to change the direction in where I'm going, or I'm going to just burn out and I'm not going to be a good therapist, family member, partner, mom to anyone. And so really just starting to take shifts and trust myself and believe myself that, it started with putting my notice in at my job, going full-time into private practice, working with clients that are the best fit for me, protecting my time boundaries, how I scheduled my workday, trying new exciting, fun, creative things that helped me to feel more energy about my work. That's kind of, long story short, that's really what started to happen and evolve. And then I started meeting other therapists who were thinking outside of the box. We're feeling the same way in their, early days of being a therapist and doing things differently. And I think that having, just seeing other people doing that and being successful and having kind of some mentorship community was what really helped me to give me a little bit of courage to kind of take the step, take the leap, and try doing things new, try having my own business, offering CEs, teaching workshops, putting myself out there.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really helpful. So as someone who can relate to a lot of what you're describing and really identifying as an achiever, maybe some people pleasing, and you throw the ADHD component in there. And then when you get accustomed to in community mental health, like you were talking about, there's productivity expectations that have to be met. There's the administrative component. very oftentimes we're not doing our best work. We can't always pick the clients that we're working with. We're very oftentimes seeing more than anyone should. And then making that shift and eventually starting your own practice. And then it sounds like you have also added in several things in the mix. What is helpful for you to pace yourself and still feel like you are accomplishing things and achieving while also still being true to you, checking in with yourself? I find that a really hard balance. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it was really hard, and I really needed to work with, whether it be a coach, helpers, my own therapist, to really look at things from the outside and help me to see what was happening. That I was essentially in the beginning, I was recreating the dynamic in community mental health, meaning not giving myself a lunch break, taking on too much, saying yes when I wanted to say no, basically putting myself in that same system. It's kind of like in therapy, right? We see our clients, and sometimes, in the therapeutic setting, the dynamics that are in their family systems, they start to kind of we see that same dynamic playing out and created in the therapy space, and we're able to work with that clinically. I started to see that in my business. I was treating my business and myself like I was treated back in those days. And I really had to start by starting with boundaries, protecting time boundaries. What is it? What is a heck yes? What is a heck no? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do? What's in the middle? Really being clear on who's the best fit client for me, how many clients I can see per week, designating certain days and times to therapy work, my clinical work, and then designating other times. For my ADHD brain, I don't transition very well. So I do much better with Tuesday, Wednesday are my clinical days. I do supervision and I see my clients. And then I have the other days of the week where I can do admin, be creative. I can write. I can, do graphics and flyers. I love doing a lot of those things from my business as well. And so I really had to protect my time, my energy, and stick with that for a while in the beginning until that became a new pattern. And then after that, I really had to kind of step back and evaluate, I have a lot of ideas. I can't do them all. I had to tell myself no, or not right now. And that was hard, but really focusing on one or two things instead of 10. And that's probably the best advice I ever got was you're doing too much. You're doing too many things. And if it's chaotic for you, it's going to feel chaotic to the people who might want to, be your client or be your customer or sign up for your things because you're doing too much. So I had to really rein it in and focus on the two things that really lit me up and excited me, and just put the other things kind of on my parking lot, that it's not right now. I'm not telling myself no, I can come to it later if I have time and energy, but let's really nurture, nourish, and put energy into these projects that really mean a lot to you and that really excite you and light you up. And the things that are kind of the maybes, they can go in your parking lot. And the things that are like no's, you can actually just let go of those and you don't have to do them anymore. It was kind of like the long answer to your question, but that was a process. And it took time for me to really kind of settle into that and really make that the new pattern.
I'm feeling really called out right now. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are too, but so invaluable to hear from someone who has walked their own path and is on the other side. And that even if it's challenging because it goes against maybe some of those patterns that we've developed or what we're accustomed to, or even what we've lived through before, that continuing to push, and a lot of the strategies that you gave are really helpful, that we can get there and it is okay. And would you agree you don't lose that sense of accomplishment? I would think that you get to a point where you can do things even better because it's more concentrated and focused than giving a little bit of yourself to all of these things.
Yes, definitely going from spreading myself too thin to really being able to focus and improve, and not that anything's ever perfect, but perfect certain things and repeat. There's this thing I had said to someone I was working with, actually someone who was helping me kind of on the back end. I said, I'm starting to feel like I'm forgetting to get things to you, or that I have too much space in my day. And she said, that is normal. You're supposed to feel like that when you start letting go of things, asking for help. And then number two, putting all the ideas to the side and just focusing on the one or two. You should start to feel slightly bored and a little bit like, am I missing something? Because that is what ease feels like. And that is what it's supposed to feel like. I thought, I'm a therapist. I should know this, right? That it's okay to be able to rest. It's okay to have breaks in between. It's okay to not be like in that on activated state all the time. And that was like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like, and that feels nice.
Well, it's so helpful to normalize that because it can really go against what we're used to. And just because that's what our experience has been, it doesn't mean that that's best for our nervous system, for our own mental health, our well-being in general. And we know the impact of chronic stress. And it's one of those things that can be really insidious, where it's having that effect and we don't realize it until sometimes it's too late.
Yeah.
So very helpful.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, your body doesn't know the difference between a bear chasing you in the wild or you are taking on too many clients and not taking a lunch break. It just knows that it's stressed and activated and it's feeling that way for long periods of time. And that's like you're running a car, into the ground, and you're not, letting it rest and getting oil changes and taking care of it and maintaining it. Your body is the same way. It doesn't know the difference. Am I getting chased by a bear or am I just working too hard? Even if it's fun parts of your work that you like, you're excited and your nervous system and your body is still being overworked.
Very true. So you've mentioned self-trust a few times, and I would love to hear more about what that can look like for someone. Definitely recognize how important it is, can see the benefits of making that a focal point, but easier said than done. So how would you define that? And if someone is listening and they know that that's something that could be an area for them to work on, but maybe not something that they've put a lot of energy into, what can that process look like to develop it?
Yeah, one of the common themes I notice with my clients is that they struggle with or lack self-trust. And to know what that looks like, often it looks like needing reassurance from others constantly, not just checking in, but I'm constantly asking for reassurance. I'm constantly asking for feedback on something, even if it's something I've done and done it well. I'm checking in to see how other people are feeling, but kind of overriding how I'm feeling. And a lot of times, if they're constantly doing that, I'll ask the question, how well do you trust yourself? And usually that's like, what do you mean? And it's, do you trust, if you didn't have the option to go and ask somebody for their opinion or reassurance, what would that feel like for you? And oftentimes they say, it feels scary. I feel uncomfortable. I feel uneasy. And why is that? Because they don't trust their own judgment. They worry about what other people will think versus I know what I feel. I know where my values are at. I know where my boundaries are at. I know what's right for me. Why can't I go with that? And that's kind of where we start with that is, and it's practice. It's like learning a new skill. It's learning a new skill. It's working a new muscle. It's being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, allowing yourself to feel discomfort. But practicing baby steps until it becomes something that's more automatic. So it's not a single, here's one thing you can do and you're going to trust yourself tomorrow. It's just as you would form or your trust with others would grow. That takes time and consistency. You have to see people behaving in a way that they follow through with what they say. They're safe. You have to trust yourself that you follow through with what you say to yourself. You don't break promises to yourself. You follow through with commitments. And it's a period of time and consistent behavior until you learn to trust yourself. And then it becomes more automatic and it kind of surprises you out of nowhere that you don't need that constant reassurance, that you're okay if somebody maybe has an opinion that's opposite from yours or doesn't agree with you, that you can tolerate that more.
Absolutely. And I see how that ties into a lot of other things that you had mentioned, maybe that tendency to be a people pleaser or how all of that can translate and become burnout when we might not even realize it. And then there we are. And we're forced to take a break because we didn't maybe pause and do some of those things earlier on. So how does all of this translate into your work with clients? What are some of the things that you offer and that you've developed to help people with this? And what could somebody expect when they're working with you?
Yeah. Well, what was coming up quite often, and I know that this, if you're a therapist and you're somebody who works with kind of a niche population, you start to see themes and patterns that are happening for other, you're repeating yourself or clients, you're hearing the same kind of theme of information coming in session. And so I noticed that there was this pattern and theme with many of the clients I worked with, and even just colleagues, of this self-trust, feeling disconnected from self, not knowing what we want anymore, feeling more motivated by external pressure of like what others think and want versus what you do that's internal. And so because I was kind of repeating and reiterating things in session, I decided that, this would probably be a good space to form a group. And I'd run groups before, mostly on just different topics, women's topics like perinatal mental health, trauma, birth trauma, perimenopause, ADHD. And I thought, there's like all these different women I'm working with different stages of life and experiences, but this underlying pattern is this self-trust, disconnection from self-abandonment pattern. And so
Mm-hmm.
I formed a group focused on that. And in the group, we focus on basically getting to know ourselves again. So rebuilding a relationship with yourself, getting to know the authentic, unmasked version of yourself, building self-trust, connecting with that authentic version of self. And then we also address kind of the roots of like childhood attachment, self-abandonment, abandonment from others in our life. And it's it's a group based on 5 pillars that we address. And I teach resourcing, mindfulness-based skills in every session so that the person has the capacity to kind of tolerate, because it, can get heavy when we're really getting into some of the stuff in session, but it is, we go at a pace that's appropriate for a group dynamic and setting. Everyone is kind of screened before they come into group to make sure that that's the appropriate place for them, and whether or not they need more support or not. But I started the group called It Begins With Us to really address all those things, because so many people were talking to me in one-on-one sessions about this and felt very isolated and alone. And I thought, we need to bring everyone together so that they know that they're not alone, that this is a common experience, but people don't really know how to articulate it, to identify it, to talk about it. And so I created the group to address, this common theme. And it's one of the favorite parts about my job now is running this group of women. We just finished a cohort in the fall. And, I got some really great feedback that some of the women even stayed connected, and they kind of started their own like little just check in with each other. How's everyone doing for accountability? And it's just been a really great experience to watch as a therapist. It's not a therapy-based group, and so it's more skill building and support based. So it is open to different people, whether they've completed therapy or they're still in therapy, kind of in that middle phase and just need more support or need a built-in community.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds great. So what size are the groups? Do you do them locally? Is it virtual? It can be people from all over.
Yeah, it's a virtual group. I did start out starting out with a group based out of California, because I wasn't sure when I started out if it was going to be more of a psychotherapy based group. And as it's evolved, it really has. A lot of the people coming to group already have their own therapist or have already gone through therapy to really get into the things that they need more one-on-one space for. And so what it ended up being was it felt more like guided skill building, community support, slightly processed, where the group members are kind of sharing their experiences with one another and how hearing their stories impact one another. And so because it kind of evolved into that, I have separated it out. This is not a therapy-based service, so it's open to those in and out of California. It's virtual. It's a weekly group. It's cohort-based, so it's the same group of people that from start to finish. Started out as an 8-week group, and now it's a 10-week group because we had more content than we had enough weeks for, and some wanted to stay longer than the 8 weeks. So it's a 10-week group, and it runs several times throughout the year, and it's anywhere from 4 to 10 members. Typically, we have about 5 to 6 members in a group, or 5 to 7 members in a group.
Oh, that sounds great. So I'll make sure to include the link to make it easy for everyone. And then tell us about the Therapist Bootcamp.
Yeah.
Group Bootcamp.
Yeah, Therapist Group Bootcamp. So this is a program for therapists who want to create their own groups. So if you're a therapist and you've thought about running your own groups, creating a group, or maybe you're skilled in running groups, but you really want to kind of set aside time to get something specific, like your signature group, off the ground in a topic that you really are excited about, I created an 8-week boot camp. So we go from start to finish, starting from who the best client fit is for your group, the topic of the group, how you're going to market your group. We have a curriculum section where we talk about how to outline curriculum, and if that's the style of group that you're going to run. We talk about taking payments, all the logistics and the back ends that people, when you're in the Facebook groups and you're like trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I integrate? How do I do a landing page? What do I do on my flyer? We cover all of that in bootcamp. So it's an 8-week program. And we cover it all. That is also a cohort-based program where it's 10 or fewer therapists or healers. And I've had some coaches in that group too that are wanting to run a group program. But we meet weekly live. There are recorded replays for boot camp. So if they can't make it live, they can watch a replay. That way they get the content. There's templates provided as well. And then everyone is inside us off of social media, private communities, so that in between our meetups, if they want to share their flyer and get feedback, or if they have a question, they can message and get responses from people in between the weekly live meetups. We also have guest experts who've come in and talked about things from marketing to burnout, to how to, create your marketing materials that speak to your ideal client, how to fill your groups. And then we do stay connected. So group bootcamp members who've finished and are graduates, I try to keep them connected where, every month we do either a reunion call or we do a workshop. I'll think of a topic that's just people are asking about. And I've created workshops, just like standalone workshops for past group bootcamp members to come back and attend, just to also keep them connected and accountable, and just so they don't kind of feel like they're alone out there doing this on their own. And I'm offering a free workshop in January. It's called Plan Your Therapy Group Workshop. It's a 90-minute workshop that's a little snippet of boot camp, kind of starts them out from like, where do you start? And they'll get a checklist, a roadmap, and then they get a 90-minute kind of like workshop style webinar, but we're on camera. We can talk to one another. So that just kind of helps them to get started, because that's usually where people struggle, is just to getting started. They feel stuck with their ideas and they don't know where to start.
And what is the workshop?
It's called Plan Your Therapy Group Workshop. And that's all on my website too. So if they go to the bootcamp site and they want information on bootcamp, they're going to get the information for the workshop. And so that is January 27th. It's a 90-minute via Zoom. And that's live. So and people can sign up for that as would like to, so we can get a big group for that.
Love it. These are great offerings. So as we're wrapping things up, I would love to hear from you the contrast. So when you're thinking back to maybe a time in your life or people that you've worked with that are not necessarily in a place where they're feeling that trust within themselves, they're out of alignment, and they might be engaging in some of those behaviors that feel maybe more obligatory than truly leading to their own fulfillment. And then in contrast, through all the work that you've done or how you've helped people get to the other side, what does that look like for those that maybe haven't experienced it yet?
What does it look like to be on the other side of the
More often than not, because, right, we're not striving for perfection, it's progress.
Yeah. So what it feels like to be on the other side of it is freedom is the first word that comes up. Is overthinking. You still have our patterns and our habits and our parts that come up, but overthinking tends to quiet down. Those perfectionistic parts that have to get it all right all the time tend to quiet a bit, and feeling less just overwhelmed and consumed by like just like that hamster wheel of what ifs and overthinking. It feels free. It feels like there's space. You feel more connected to yourself and feel like you don't have to the energy it takes to kind of have a mask up and not be yourself and be kind of thinking 10 steps ahead about what other people are going to do and what you should be doing versus what you shouldn't. When you have less of that happening, there's just so much more space and energy and freedom, and it's like a lightness. So that's what that's how I feel, and that's what I see clients and women that I work with, they just like light up. They look more connected. There's just like almost like less tension in their face and their body, and almost like this childlike part that comes up, because then they start to really reconnect to that authentic part that tends to be who they kind of were before kind of the world got a hold of them and really told them, you have to stay in this box. And so it's really fun to see people when they're on that other side. And the way it starts is it feels kind of overwhelming to think of like being from where you're starting to where you want to be. It really is just, I asked the question of what would be the worst thing that could happen if you trusted yourself and made decisions based on how you feel versus how others feel. What's the scariest part about that? And just starting that conversation is the first step. Yeah.
That's great. What a wonderful place to leave people that are listening, just very optimistic and hopeful. So is there anything that we didn't touch upon today that you would like to share with the listeners, or maybe just a final message to keep the gears turning once we stop recording?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we covered everything, but I would just say if you're listening and you're kind of something resonates with you, just spend some time with yourself, get to know yourself, and just know that it starts with you. You know, making that change starts with you. And deep down, we all know what we want, who we are, what's best for us. It's just hard sometimes to access that. So don't be afraid to reach out and get support so that you can start that.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate all you shared. It was helpful to learn more about your journey and kind of walking us through what your process is like with those that you've helped. So really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.